Black businessman disguises himself as a customer and is kicked out of his own store. The next day, something happens that leaves everyone completely shocked. If you're new to this channel, I invite you to click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any amazing new stories here. Adam was a person full of mystery. Even though he owned one of the largest chains of famous brand stores, he was so discreet that few people knew the man behind this great business. Adam was tall and had a calm demeanor. He had a presence that, although quiet, showed that he was strong. He was born and raised in a simple place. He knew what it was like to face prejudice and overcome the obstacles that society imposed on people like him. He set up his chain of stores with a clear objective: to challenge the idea that only people of another type can succeed. He wanted to show that a black man could run a major luxury fashion brand and succeed in a world that is often full of prejudice. Their stores, which are located in the most famous places in the city, cater to customers who have varied tastes and are demanding. But Adam has never cared about being famous. Even with the money he earned and the respect he gained in the business world, Adam still felt the weight of his simple origins and the marks of his personal difficulties. With this way of thinking, Adam continued to build his empire. He avoided the exaggerations of fame. Adam focused on what was really worthwhile: work, creativity, and the daily struggle against injustice that he and many others faced every day. One night, something inside him made him want to take a closer look at how the parts of his business were working. He didn't look at it like a business owner, but like a normal customer. He wanted to know what service was like in a famous brand store. This service had to be excellent and respectful. He was especially curious about how the service was with customers who didn't wear expensive clothes or didn't seem to have a lot of money. Adam, who always likes to be discreet, dressed simply that evening. He wore old jeans, a worn-out cotton shirt, and a pair of sneakers that anyone can find in ordinary stores. He didn't look like a regular customer of a famous brand, but that's exactly what he wanted to experience. He wanted to understand, in his own skin, how a normal customer, or at times one seen as less important by society, would be treated. When he entered the mall, the bright lights and loud sounds of the place didn't take his attention away. His steps were careful and quiet. They led him straight to the expensive clothing store he owned. The windows were very well organized. There were suits that had been tailored, elegant dresses, and accessories that sparkled. From the outside, the store looked like a beautiful and special place. It was a place where only rich and important people entered to spend a lot of money. Adam entered through the door that opened by itself. As soon as he entered, he immediately smelled the light scent of an expensive perfume in the air. As he held up the expensive fabric of one of the clothes, he noticed that the clerk was looking at him discreetly, a brief, appraising look. The clerk's demeanor changed. He now seemed agitated, as if Adam's presence was an offense to the place he looked after. Adam looked carefully, trying to hide what was bothering him. With calm, controlled breathing, Adam decided to see how far he could go in this experiment. He chose one of the most expensive suits in the store. He began to look at the suit carefully. He seemed to be a careful customer who thought carefully before buying. He walked up to the counter. The clerk was there with a face that showed discomfort. Adam asked in a friendly way if he could try on the suit. The clerk looked at him fully, noticing how he looked. The contempt, which was slight but evident, was noticed. "That's a very expensive suit, sir," said the clerk in a way that sounded more like a warning than an offer of help. Adam remained calm. "I understand. I want to try it on." His voice was quiet but showed the strength of someone who already had the respect of others. The attendant, however, continued to act the same way. He laughed quietly and glared. He said something about not spending time with curious people before walking away from the counter. Adam, without getting angry, asked to speak to the store manager. He felt a lot of injustice inside, but he knew he had to be calm. This was his business. These were the people he had hired. Now it was time to find out how far this discriminatory attitude went. A few minutes later, a man appeared. He walked with determined steps and showed an expression of authority on his face. His name was Eric, who was the store manager. He wore a suit that was well pressed, a tie that was neatly tied, and had an expression of cordiality on his face that wasn't real. This expression quickly changed when he looked at someone he didn't think deserved his attention. When Eric approached, it didn't take him long to look Adam up and down. He noticed that Adam wore simple clothes and there was no clear sign that he was rich. Eric had an increasingly cold expression. He paused for a moment, feeling bad, before giving his answer. "You see, sir," he began, choosing his words carefully, "we can't let customers try on this kind of suit without making sure they really want to buy it. It's a product that costs a lot, you know. Those words, however politely spoken, carried a strong criticism. Adam didn't seem to be the person who could afford the suit. The idea that he was there just to play with the expensive clothes was noted. I know very well what that means, Adam replied. His voice was calm, but in a way that showed he was getting firmer. He knew it was time to show who he really was, but he decided to wait. I wanted to know how far this situation would go. Eric, seeing that Adam didn't want to back down, tried to be even more serious. If you can't show that you can afford it, you'd better get something from another store. Here, our customers know what they want and can afford it. Eric spoke with a certain malice. He used words that sounded polite but showed contempt. It was as if he was reminding Adam that he had a low place in a social situation that was unfair and full of prejudice. Adam, however, didn't turn away. He looked Eric in the eye and, keeping his cool, asked him to call the person in charge of the store. "I'm in charge here," said Eric with a very arrogant manner. He seemed to want to put an end to any chance of Adam having an opinion at that point. But Adam, keeping to his manner, said again, "Then please call security. I want them to solve this question." Eric was surprised by the request and stopped for a moment. They walked over to Eric. He looked at them with an expression of agreement. Then he said seriously, "This man is making a mess. I want you to get him out of the store now." Adam, however, remained calm. He was sure that this confirmed everything he thought. Discrimination didn't just show itself in words and looks of disdain. It was now showing up physically, with the obvious intention of embarrassing him in front of the others. The security guards walked towards Adam without asking any questions. One of them grabbed his arm. The others started pushing him out. "Come on, get out of here," one of them said harshly. Adam, who was still in control, didn't use violence. However, his calm face now showed a firm determination. The manager looked on from afar with a pleased face. For him, this was the end of a problem with his store's image. He couldn't see that in an ironic way. He was sending away not just a customer, but the real owner of the big business he thought he was defending. As Adam was pulled out of the store, many people began to gather. The bright lights of the mall showed the scene in an almost theatrical way. The voices of the security guards could be heard throughout the place as they led Adam away. But what Eric didn't know, what he could never have thought, was that the man he had offended so much was the founder of the empire he thought he controlled. Adam, the person he disliked, was the real owner of the store. And this discovery, which could not be avoided and which caused a great deal of sadness, would be the end of Eric. After being thrown out of the mall, Adam got up slowly. He tidied his simple clothes carefully. He didn't turn around. There was no need for a fight now. There was no need to talk. Adam understood that his fight would now take place in a much more important place, justice. As he left the mall, he thought about what he would do the next day. The next day came with a new light. But for Adam, last night was still on his mind. That morning, he wasn't just preparing for a normal day at work. He had a goal in mind. He felt a strong desire to do justice. When I arrived at the store, everything seemed normal, as if the night before had never happened. The windows glittered with elegant suits and fine dresses. The employees were going about their normal business. They didn't notice the hurricane that was about to hit them. Adam entered through the same door where last night he had been shamed and sent away. But this time, his attitude was quite different. He wasn't just an unknown customer, but the owner of the big business they thought they were defending. The attendant who had treated the man with disdain was at the counter. He didn't realize who the man was who had just walked in. Adam walked slowly up to him. Now Adam's presence could no longer be ignored. When the attendant looked up, he was confused. He knew Adam, but he didn't quite understand what he was seeing. The ordinary man from last night was now standing in front of him like someone important. He was very well dressed and had a posture that showed he had power. Before the attendant could say anything, Adam said in a quiet but confident voice, "Where's the manager? Please get Eric." The words, which were still polite, showed that there was no chance of talking about it. The attendant, who was very nervous, did as he was told without asking. He walked quickly to the office at the back of the store. A few minutes later, Eric arrived. It took him a few seconds to recognize Adam. His face changed from an emotionless expression to a mixture of surprise and concern. Eric, who was used to serving customers, had always thought he could control everything in the store. But at that moment, Adam's presence left him very confused. The man he had embarrassed and sent away the night before was now standing in front of him with a totally different attitude. Sorry, there isn't a full text to paraphrase. Could you send a longer text? What are you doing here? Eric finally asked. He tried to hide his discomfort in a way that seemed gentle. He didn't know what was going to happen. Adam remained calm and took a step forward. Eric, do you know who I am? The question hung in the air, difficult and full of meaning. Eric closed and opened his eyes, not understanding. Yes, you came here yesterday. Adam stopped the conversation, speaking more firmly. I own this store. I own this entire chain. The words fell heavily to the floor. Silence dominated the place. Eric's face drained of color. He stuttered. He was trying to find a reason or an explanation for what he had done last night. I wasn't aware. That's right, Adam said, his voice passing through the air like a knife. You didn't know who I am. And that's why you thought you could treat me the way you did. You thought you could make me feel bad and send me away without even listening to me. You thought that because I was dressed simply, I didn't matter. Because of that, you evaluated me. I made this network with my principles, Adam continued, keeping his gaze on Eric. Values like respect, equality, and justice. What I saw here yesterday was very different from what I believe. What happened to me showed that you and the other people here don't understand anything about what this company stands for. You didn't just respect me, you respected the reason I fight. Eric, now clearly sweating, tried to give an explanation. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean it? Adam stopped him, raising his voice a little. You pulled me out of my own store like I was a thug. That wasn't a mistake, Eric. It showed what you're really like. And there's no place for that kind of behavior here. Adam took a deep breath. He let the silence act. With frightening calm, he spoke. You've been fired. And not just you. All the people who took part in this act of racism and violence have been fired. What's more, I'm taking legal action to make sure that everyone takes responsibility for what they do. The discovery surprised everyone. The atmosphere, once charged with tension, now seemed to be permeated with dread. Adam wasn't just firing people. He was bringing justice to those who had been part of his humiliation. And in doing so, he was teaching a lesson that would never be forgotten. I'm going to clean up this store. I'm going to cleanse this company of any trace of discrimination, of prejudice. And you, who were here yesterday, will learn that the hard way. Sitting in his leather chair in the office with the panoramic view of the city in front of him, Adam began to reflect on how to turn the pain and injustice he had suffered into a movement of transformation. Then he had an idea. Not only would he keep prejudiced people away from his company, he would also carry out a project against racism in his stores. This would set an example for other companies in the entire luxury market. His aim was to create a place where respect for differences was so important that it could not be given up. Every employee, customer, and partner should be treated with honor, no matter what they look like, what color their skin is, or where they come from. The project began to be organized the same day. Adam called his top bosses and told them of his choice. He wanted an intense training course for all the workers in the network. This included both the managers and the salespeople who stay in the store. This isn't just a course, he told his superiors. It's a change in culture. I want everyone to know that in our company we will not accept prejudice. Respect for people's dignity will be our most important value. Adam had a serious and determined manner. His eyes showed a strength that would not change. He knew that this initiative would not only change the internal environment of his company, but would also impact the way the brand was perceived by the public. Adam's designer stores were already recognized for the excellence of their products and service, but now they would also be associated with a clear social commitment, the fight against racial discrimination. To ensure that the project was effective, Adam decided to hire experts on the subject, activists and educators who dealt with issues of racism and prejudice in different social spheres. He wanted the trainings to be more than just lectures. He wanted them to be a transformative experience for each employee. They needed to understand, in essence, the impact of their actions and how they could be part of real change. In addition, Adam set up an internal reporting channel where any employee or customer could report incidents of discrimination, abuse, or prejudice anonymously. He wanted to ensure that there would be no more situations like the one he had experienced, and that any racist attitude would be treated seriously. There would be no tolerance for any kind of behavior that violated the values he was implementing. In the months that followed, the impact of the project began to be felt in every corner of the store chain. Employees reported that the training sessions opened their eyes to prejudices they didn't even know they had. Customers, in turn, began to notice the difference in service. More welcoming, more respectful, more inclusive. Adam's brand has become a symbol of progress, not just in the world of fashion, but in the fight against discrimination. Every store, every employee, every customer was now part of Adam's new vision. He had promised himself that he would never again see someone treated the way he had been, especially in his own empire. The pain of humiliation had given way to a deep sense of justice. What he had initiated was not just a change in policy, but a cultural transformation. While Adam pushed ahead with his anti-racist initiatives and turned his company into a symbol of justice and inclusion, Eric, the former manager who had been fired, watched from afar. For Eric, it wasn't just a dismissal. It was a public humiliation from which he could not escape. His job prospects had closed. Every day, Eric's anger grew. He couldn't accept that Adam, the man he had despised and underestimated, had not only turned the tables on him, but had also destroyed him personally and professionally. Sitting in his small apartment, Eric began to plan. His nights were filled with thoughts of revenge, and his hatred for Adam fueled his determination. He felt wronged, as if Adam had deliberately ruined his life, when in reality Eric refused to acknowledge his own mistakes. Instead of reflecting on the behavior that led to his downfall, he directed all the blame at Adam, seeing him as the cause of all his suffering. With every headline he saw about Adam's initiatives, about the success of the new anti-racist policies in the stores, Eric's anger grew. He watched the rise of Adam and his empire with bitterness, unable to accept that the man he once thought inferior was now stronger than ever. Resentment was eating Eric up inside, and soon, he decided he needed to do something to settle the score. It was on one of these evenings, while browsing through news and reports about Adam's success, that an idea formed in his mind. A plan slowly began to take shape in the shadows of his troubled mind. He knew that direct revenge and open confrontation would be impossible. Adam was now a powerful man surrounded by security and respect. No, Eric needed to be smarter, sneakier. He needed to hit Adam in a way that wouldn't just cause pain, but would shake him to his core. Something that would make him feel the humiliation and loss that Eric had felt. It was then that he remembered Adam's car, a Ferrari Spider, a symbol of luxury, success, and status. For Eric, that car represented everything he hated most about Adam. It was the embodiment of the success he believed he deserved, but which Adam possessed. If he managed to take it away from Adam, it wouldn't just be a question of money. It would be an offense to Adam's pride and reputation. It would be an attack on his status and influence. With this idea in his head, Eric started to do things. He spoke to people he knew from the more dangerous side of the market. Friends and acquaintances from the past were people who did things wrong. They were into illegal activities like stealing cars and selling expensive things that weren't theirs. He understood that if he wanted to get Adam's Ferrari, he needed to know the right people to make the plan work well, without anyone noticing. These people were ready to help, especially since there was the promise of a good reward. Eric spent weeks sorting out the details. He knew exactly where the car was. He knew Adam's schedule and carefully analyzed the security at the house and where the car was. Every part was carefully organized. He left no room for deception. For Eric, this robbery wasn't just a way to get even. It was a way of regaining, even for a short time, the control over his life that he had lost. That night, everything happened as planned. Eric used his contacts in the criminal world to put together a group of specialists in stealing expensive cars. They were very good at what they did. They worked quickly and efficiently. They had an almost perfect ability to disable alarms and security systems without leaving a mark. The way they acted was right and careful. The alarm was turned off in a few seconds. The cameras were set so as not to record what happened. The Ferrari, which was intact, was now with people who knew how to act at times like this. The parking lot was deserted. Only one guard was there. He was very sleepy and didn't notice what was happening near his security booth. Within minutes, the Ferrari Spider, a car that attracted a lot of attention, disappeared into the darkness. It was taken to a place that nobody knows about. For Eric, managing to steal it was more than winning once. It was a sign that he had hurt Adam in a way that few things could. As the car drove through the dark city streets, Eric smiled. The smile was icy and full of pleasure. He had organized everything very carefully. Now the prizes were going to the illegal market. There, it would be sold for a lot of money. The $400,000 Eric would get for the Ferrari would only be part of the reward. What made him happy was the pain Adam would feel when he discovered that something very valuable had been stolen from him unexpectedly. A few hours later, the car was in a secret location. This place was a shed far away from the authorities. The car was being prepared for sale. In a dark and dirty place, men with a lot of experience were making the final adjustments. They were ready to send the Ferrari to an unnamed buyer, perhaps in a country far away. For them, it was just another opportunity to make money. For Eric, it was the heist he'd always wanted. With the money from the robbery now secure, Eric began to plan the next step in his revenge. He understood that Adam, with all his strength and money, would miss the money. But that wasn't what would really finish him off. Eric needed to get closer to Adam in a personal way. It was at that moment that he thought of Samantha, who is Adam's wife. The Ferrari was a symbol of wealth, but Samantha was the way to end the man entirely. Eric was only just beginning to take his revenge. He had already taken one of Adam's most important things, but now he wanted something different. With the money he had earned from selling the Ferrari, Eric felt safer and braver. He had already charmed Samantha with his friendly manner and willingness to go on adventures. Adam, in his opinion, would never be able to do that. To Eric, Adam was a man who followed his routine as a very successful businessman. However, he failed to notice what was happening very close to him. After selling the Ferrari and with Samantha by his side, Eric thought he was in control. He and Samantha began to make plans. They used the money from selling the car. They also felt free with their escape. They lived like people on the run. They moved around all the time. They were always ahead of the police. The police had started investigating the robbery. Although Eric felt triumphant, he didn't pay enough attention to Adam's strong will and to justice. The theft of the Ferrari would not go unnoticed. Eric's future was already decided, even if he didn't know it. While he enjoyed his lucky break, the police continued to search for clues. Investigations soon began to indicate that he was involved. Adam was surprised to discover that his car had been stolen, but he wasn't sad about it. He understood that this attack was not just about the car, but about something more important. It was an attempt to harm him at his core. But Adam, because of his experience and strength, knew that taking revenge was not the solution. He believed that justice, with the passage of time, would sort itself out. In the meantime, he would focus on what was really important, continuing his legacy and fighting for justice and equality. While the police carried out their investigation, Eric thought he was safe. For Eric, the real scam wasn't about money, but about feelings. He knew that if he really wanted to put an end to Adam, he needed to go further and touch his heart. That's how he began to think about Samantha, Adam's beautiful young wife. Samantha was 19 years old. She was famous for her beauty and for always being with Adam at parties. People commented that her marriage to the wealthy businessman wasn't really about love. Many people said in groups that Adam and Samantha's relationship was more about interest and looks. Samantha, who was young and had big dreams, stayed with Adam more for the good life and expensive things he offered than for any real feeling. Eric, who always pays attention and is clever, noticed this from the start. He had noticed Samantha several times. He noticed that she had a distant posture and that she looked away. Even though she was close to Adam, there was something in her way of acting that showed he was dissatisfied inside. He seemed to have an unfulfilled desire. She seemed to hope for something more in life, something that Adam's money couldn't provide. Eric, who is very ambitious and knows how to influence others, saw that situation as a great chance for him. Eric, with his charming manner and good looks, began to get close to Samantha. At first, he did it discreetly. He knew he couldn't be direct, so he decided to use a thoughtful way of acting. At events and parties where the three of them were, he made a few comments. He also gave compliments discreetly. In addition, he took part in conversations that seemed normal. She gradually gained his trust. In this way, she began to make him doubt his relationship with Adam. Samantha, who at first didn't pay much attention to Eric, began to like him. There was something about his confident, cheeky manner that made her curious. He wasn't like Adam. Adam was a person who liked to follow rules. He was quiet and cared a lot about how others saw him. Eric, on the other hand, seemed to be free and carefree. He was always looking for new adventures. This courage was exactly what was missing from her dull life as the wife of a very successful businessman. The encounters between Eric and Samantha began to happen more often. What used to be discreet glances at parties soon turned into closer conversations and, finally, hidden encounters. Samantha was influenced by her feelings and the novelty of the situation. She felt full of life in a way she had never felt with Adam. Eric gave her what Adam, with his security and routine, couldn't: excitement and risk. Their relationship quickly became very intense. Samantha, who had previously felt trapped in a rich life without joy, was now living an adventure that made her feel freer and stronger. For her, staying with Eric was more than a betrayal. It was a way of showing that she was independent. It was a way of getting away from Adam's influence. But what she didn't know was that for Eric, it was all part of his plan to get revenge. He wasn't just interested in Samantha. He wanted to use his relationship with her to break up with Adam. He wanted Adam to feel betrayed and ashamed in a way that taking his Ferrari car couldn't. As the case went on, Adam, who was always focused on his work and the pursuit of justice, didn't see the signs that there were problems in his marriage. He had confidence in Samantha. He felt that the marriage, even though it was more of a partnership than a loving relationship, was stable. But things began to change. Samantha began to act colder. She was absent more often, and her excuses were more confused. Adam was focused on his routine and getting back to normal after his car was stolen. He didn't realize right away that he was emotionally distancing himself from her. Adam only became suspicious when Samantha started missing important appointments. These were events that before she had always made a point of going to. He tried to talk to her, but Samantha's answers were confusing. She seemed to get increasingly irritated by Adam's attempts to get close to her. The truth was that, at that point, Samantha was already very attached to Eric. This caused her to completely distance herself from her marriage. The discovery of the affair came suddenly, like a punch that Adam never imagined. One day, while looking through some personal papers, Adam found messages from Samantha that she had exchanged with Eric. These messages contained a lot of love and friendship. At first, he didn't believe it. He couldn't believe that his wife, the woman he lived with in luxury and comfort, was cheating on him with the man who had humiliated him and stolen his car. Adam was very angry. He wasn't just angry about the betrayal. What made him even more upset was knowing that Eric, the man he had sent away and bad-mouthed, was now meddling in his personal life in a very painful way. Samantha's betrayal was the strongest pain Adam could feel. The theft of the Ferrari was a loss of property, but his wife's betrayal of Eric hurt much more. Adam had always thought that, even with the differences and lack of depth in their relationship, Samantha still respected him. Now he realized that he had been deceived. He had been betrayed not only by an employee who harbored resentment, but also by the person with whom he had built his life. Adam was very angry. He felt betrayed by so many people. It was as if everything he had done was falling apart. The pain that Samantha's betrayal caused him was very strong. At that moment, he understood that it wasn't just a question of taking revenge between businessmen. It was something very intimate, very personal. Samantha, the young woman he thought had offered him everything, was now with his worst enemy, the man who had destroyed his trust in his home. That evening, Samantha came home late, as she had done for the past few weeks. Adam was waiting for her in the study. He was sitting in his leather chair. His gaze was fixed on the door and his heart was heavy. When she arrived, he called out to her in a cold, distant voice. It was different from the friendly tone she knew. Samantha, suspecting something, approached slowly. She didn't know that her betrayal had already been discovered. "We need to talk," Adam said, looking directly at her. He spoke calmly, but with a strength that showed something wasn't right. Samantha, trying to stay calm, sat down in the chair in front of him. "What happened, Adam? Did something happen?" Her voice sounded calm, but inside she felt a growing anxiety. She realized that there was something strange about the evening. Adam took a deep breath. Then he placed Samantha's cell phone on the table without fumbling. "I know you and Eric." Adam stood up. He was very angry and sad. "You broke everything, Samantha. I gave you a quiet and safe life. I believed in you. I'm sorry, I can't give you an answer to that question. You've joined my greatest enemy. You've deceived me in every way there is." Samantha tried to protect herself, but what she said wasn't strong. "I never meant for this to happen, Adam." I felt confused. "You're confused?" Adam stopped the person speaking, anger in his voice. "Were you in doubt, or were you taking the chance to end what we did together? I could understand if it was someone else, but Eric? You knew what he did and what it meant. And yet you decided for him." Samantha began to cry. Tears streamed down her face. She tried to find a way to apologize, but Adam didn't deserve forgiveness at that moment. He was hurt in a way he had never felt before. It wasn't just hurt pride, but the feeling that he had been deceived by those he trusted the most. His life, both personal and professional, was in a mess. He knew he could never see Samantha the same way again. Adam looked at her and spoke the words that put an end to any possibility of getting along again. "I'd like you to leave. Now." Samantha tried to get up. She wanted to convince Adam that she still had something with him, but he wouldn't let her go on. "It's over," he said in a strong, clear voice. "You've chosen what you want, and now I'm choosing what I want." Adam, in the midst of his confused feelings, tried to talk to Samantha. He looked at her, asking for explanations. He wanted to know why she had deceived him. Samantha, however, didn't have much to say. She was confused. She didn't know if she felt better with the comfort Adam gave her or with the passion Eric made her feel. Instead of feeling remorse, she escaped with Eric. Adam was left alone with his sadness and anger. Samantha's departure with Eric showed that she had indeed cheated. There was no longer any doubt that Adam had lost not only a wife, but also the emotional security he had built up over the years. Now, he was alone. He felt betrayed and ashamed. He had the impression that everything he loved most had been taken away from him very harshly. Samantha, still shaken by her emotions after her fight with Adam, got into the car Eric had prepared for their getaway. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her bag. Her gaze was confused, remembering the last moments with Adam that were still in her head. She knew there was no going back. By meeting Eric, she had ended any chance of making peace with the man who had once given her a comfortable and prestigious life. Now she was running, not only with her body but also with her heart. She was trying to escape the consequences of the decisions she had made. Eric, on the other hand, felt a strange satisfaction. For him, it was more than just escape. It was the ultimate victory over Adam, the man who had sent him away, put him in the spotlight, and shamed him. Escaping with Samantha was the most special part of his revenge plan. Not only had he stolen Adam's Ferrari, but now he was also with the woman who had once been his wife. In Eric's mind, this was proof that he had somehow won. They drove for many hours. They left town and took different routes so as not to arouse suspicion. Eric, who always pays close attention to detail, had already made all the plans. He prepared false passports and new identities. He also found a safe place in another town, far away from Adam and the police. The money they made from selling the Ferrari would give them a good life for a while. He was very confident that, if they had the right people around, they could disappear without leaving a trace. As they traveled, Samantha looked out of the window and began to think about her choices. What had once seemed like a fun adventure, which would take her away from the boring routine of her marriage to Adam, was now beginning to show what it really was, a hopeless escape. While the two of them were still running, Samantha began to notice the first problems with Eric's plan. He, who had always seemed so confident and in control, began to show signs of nervousness. With each new place he hid, Samantha felt more alone and full of regret. Eric, who at first seemed like the person who was going to help, now showed a sadder and more hopeless side. Her anger at Adam, which once fascinated her, now seemed to consume Eric's every thought, leaving little room for what they had as a couple. He talked less about their future together, and more about how to escape the prison he knew was coming. Their bickering escalated, and Samantha began to notice that Eric saw her more as a part of his revenge plan than as a partner in life. He was so fixated on destroying Adam that he couldn't see beyond that. Samantha, who at first had let herself be carried away by this bad passion, was now trapped in a situation she didn't know how to escape. "What are we doing, Eric?" she asked, her voice full of frustration and fear. "We're running and we're not stopping. That's not a good life." Eric was angry. He tried to get her to calm down. "I'm taking care of everything, Samantha. We just have to wait a little longer. Soon we'll be free of all this." But Samantha was no longer sure. She thought that the freedom Eric said he was going to give her was just a lie. What if there's no end to it? What if we keep running forever? That's not what I thought. Eric, out of patience, replied coldly, "You knew what you were doing when you decided to stay with me. Now there's no going back." These words had an intense impact on Samantha. The house where Samantha was hiding had already become a cramped and uncomfortable place for her. What had once seemed like a fun run, full of excitement and risk, had now become a chain, both physical and emotional. The forced isolation, the frequent changes of location, and the growing tension between her and Eric changed their once very loving relationship into something bad and pressurizing. That night, the police approached the house in the mountains calmly. They approached slowly, like animals going hunting. They followed Eric's and Samantha's paths closely. They used cell phone signals, security cameras on the roads, and stories from locals who had seen the couple nearby. With the right location, a special team was sent to make the capture. They understood that Eric might try to fight back, so the plan was to get in quickly, leaving him no time to react. Inside the house, Eric was very nervous. He could tell that there was something different, as if the air around him was filled with an electricity that he couldn't see. Samantha, for her part, was very tired, both in body and mind. She could no longer stand not knowing what was going to happen. She always felt that something bad could happen at any moment. With every conversation with Eric, she realized that the man she had run away with was not the brave hero she had thought. He was someone who was sinking deeper and deeper into his own despair and anger at Adam. Suddenly, the sound of tires rumbling in the dirt outside broke the silence of the night. Eric went to the window. He saw the lights of the cars and the people in uniforms. His heart beat fast. The police had arrived. "They're here," he shouted, running through the small room, desperately trying to think of a way to escape. Samantha, sitting on the sofa, felt her stomach sink. She understood that this was the end. All the exits, all the lies had finally come to an end. There was no longer any escape. The police quickly surrounded the house, positioning themselves at all the strategic points. The team leader ordered Eric and Samantha to leave with their hands in plain sight, without resistance. But Eric, because of his arrogance and desperation, didn't want to surrender so easily. He ran into one of the back rooms. He kept a gun there. He had gotten it from a friend of his. Samantha went after him and asked him not to do anything silly. "Eric, please, this is over. We have nowhere else to go," she said, her voice full of exhaustion. But Eric didn't listen. He had his gun in his hand. He started shouting at the police. He said he wasn't going to give himself up. He'd rather die than be arrested. Samantha looked at the scene with great fear. She knew she was about to lose everything. Eric's adrenaline rush, coupled with his fear of being caught, made him unexpected. Samantha saw that the man she had run away with was no longer in control. The police, realizing that Eric had a gun and was ready to fight, acted quickly. A special group entered the house. They moved carefully and quickly. Within seconds, Eric was arrested. They took his gun out of his hands. He was placed on the floor and handcuffed. Meanwhile, he shouted insults at Adam and at the system that, in his mind, had come together to finish him off. The arrest took place cleanly, without using any more force than necessary. Eric, who had harmed himself with his own decisions, was finally in the custody of the authorities. Samantha, instead, didn't object. She understood that she couldn't fight it. When the policeman came closer, she just raised her hands, tears falling silently down her face. Unlike Eric, she didn't have hatred, but regret. The decisions she had made had led her to live in pain and fear. Now, all she wanted was to end that nightmare. Eric got into the police car. He was very angry. Anger showed in every word he said. He tried to blame Adam for everything. For him, Adam was responsible for all his problems. Samantha was taken away in another police car. But unlike Eric, she wasn't being treated like a person who had committed a crime. Her involvement in the case was purely personal. The police knew that she had not directly participated in Eric's crimes. In the following days, they charged Eric with theft and failure to obey arrest. They also accused him of other crimes linked to his escape. Justice finally caught up with him, and all his attempts to escape were unsuccessful. Samantha was released after being asked many questions. She spent 2 days in custody. The day Eric would be tried arrived. Many people had been waiting for this moment, but others were afraid. The weeks after the arrest were full of legal preparations. Eric was officially charged with robbery, trying to evade the police and other crimes related to his hasty escape with Samantha. For Adam, that day was very important. It wasn't just Eric's trial for the crimes he had committed. It was also a moment of final confrontation. Adam felt many emotions. He had to deal with his wife's betrayal. Then his Ferrari was stolen. On top of that, he'd been humiliated in front of people. Now he would have the opportunity to look into the eyes of the man who broke his trust and tried to put an end to everything he had done. But what Adam didn't know was that, at the same time, this trial would also be a way for him to feel better. It would be the end of the hardest part of his life. When Eric entered the room, Everyone looked at him. He had his hands tied and was accompanied by police officers, but he had a defiant look on his face. She looked around the room quickly. When she saw Adam, her gaze became more serious. The lack of humility that had marked his earlier actions was still there. The judge arrived in the room and the trial began. The charges were presented. Eric, together with his lawyer, tried to explain that he had acted without thinking. He said that taking the Ferrari was not part of a plan to get revenge, but was an act of desperation. But the evidence was very strong. The detailed planning of the robbery, Eric's involvement with Samantha, and the well-thought-out escape clearly showed that everything was done to target Adam, both in his personal life and at work. Eric's lawyer tried to ask Adam if there was a personal feud between them. He suggested that it might have affected how Adam handled Eric's dismissal. But Adam, with a firm and respectful manner, told the events clearly. He said that Eric had been fired for not doing his job properly and for misbehaving. Since that day, he had thought up various plans to hurt him. The car theft and the problem with Samantha were just the most apparent blows in a plan that had been in the making for a long time. During his testimony, Adam didn't look at Samantha, but he knew she was listening. He spoke with the firmness of someone who felt cheated, but he also spoke calmly, knowing that even so, he had managed to move on. He didn't want to take revenge at that moment. He wanted to know if the system would punish the people who had acted so cruelly against him. When it was Samantha's turn to speak, the mood in the room became more serious. She walked to the witness stand with uncertain steps. She was visibly nervous. Her voice was very low, barely audible as she answered the judge's questions. When she was asked about her relationship with Eric, Samantha said that it had been a mistake. She tried to say that, at first, she felt like going on adventures and experiencing danger. But she soon realized that she had gotten into something much bigger than she could control. When she was asked about her relationship with Adam, she couldn't speak. I did something wrong, she said with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry for that. I made bad decisions and lost everything that was important to me. Adam was sitting on the bench. He finally looked at her. He hadn't imagined hearing those words. For a moment, he felt a sense of understanding. Samantha was very sad, just like him, but in a different way. Her regret seemed genuine, but for Adam it was too late. The trial went on until the end of the day. When it was time for the decision, the room was completely silent. The judge spoke clearly and gave Eric a 10-year prison sentence. He had been convicted of stealing and trying to escape. The people there murmured when they heard the decision. However, Eric, who was sitting in the chair, didn't show that he was sorry. He still thought that somehow he was the wronged party in that situation. He couldn't see the results of his own actions. Samantha, on the other hand, was released because the court decided that, even though she had an emotional involvement with Eric, she didn't directly help in the crimes. For her, the freedom she had gained was meaningless. She had lost Adam and also the respect of everyone around her. Now, she faced a future without knowing what was going to happen, alone. From that moment on, Adam decided to make a fresh start. He wanted to remake his life not by using the bad things of the past, but by building something new. The loneliness he felt after the marriage ended turned into a sense of calm. Adam was in no hurry to find new love. Samantha decided to look for Adam. She knew he would be at her house. It was the same mansion that now seemed a great symbol of what she had lost. Samantha had practiced what she was going to say many times in her head. However, as she approached the door, she felt the fear and regret rising inside her. What if he didn't want to meet her? What if his way of apologizing in court was just a way of ending that phase of his life, without making room for anything else? Adam, she began, her voice shaking. I know you may not want to listen to me, but I had to come. I really need to apologize to you. Not just for what happened in court, but for everything. For the way I treated you, for being so inattentive. I made a big mistake and ruined everything we had. I'm really sad. Really sad. I've already told the court, Adam replied quietly, that I forgive you, Samantha. I really do. What you did was more than just cheating. I chose to hurt myself. I was betrayed not only as a man, but also as a person. You got mixed up with a person who wanted to hurt me. To be honest, I don't know if I'll ever understand why. Samantha, her eyes filled with tears, tried to say what she felt. I was disoriented and didn't know what to do. Eric seemed to give me something I didn't think I had with you. I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. I know you feel bad about what you did. Adam said, with a calmer manner now. I accept your apology, Samantha. You need to know that I'm no longer the man you knew. What we had is over. Even if I can forgive you for your mistakes, I can't just act as if none of this ever happened. What you did changed everything. I understand, she said, crying. I just wanted you to be aware. I never meant to hurt you like that. Adam nodded. His gaze was calmer, but he still looked far away. I trust you. I wish you to find your way, Samantha. But we both know that we can't go back to what we were before. Thank you, Adam, she said in a low but heartfelt voice. Thank you for listening to what I say.